particularly in the church and in Christ, there is this beautiful reciprocity and mutuality as well. And so they're kind of key terms that get used in the intergenerational conversation.
I love that.
To talk about how those who are maybe younger, less powerful, less influential will still have voice that is honoured and respected and listened to. So that gives us that theological distinction between creator and creation that sets up the expectation that there is such a thing as a good hierarchy and a good power system that can actually be for the flourishing of all people. And so if you remove that as your foundation of the system, then all you have then is power struggles. If your primary spiritual advice, learning, teaching is coming from a podcast or an online minister, then that's not a healthy version of spiritual formation. It's a great supplement, but it can't be your primary spiritual authority in your life. You actually need an in-person, real relationship. There's an identity piece layered on with the social media performance piece. So not only do I have an identity, but I perform that identity.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Shock Absorber podcast. It is our first one for 2026 and on this lovely lounge next to me, I've got Tim joining me. Hello Tim.
Hello Joel, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, even though it's almost February, but I think this will come out in February.
Yep.
But are you well? Have you had a good break or at least January?
Yeah, it was good January. Worked for the first 2 weeks, which is always a bit of a quietish time in church life. And then took 2 proper weeks completely off. 1 week, everyone was at home. And the other week, 2 kids were at YouthWorks LIT camp. So Ros and I had 4.5 days of no responsibilities, no agenda, no calendar events, nothing. And that was amazing.
Well, did you do anything? Or
we did nothing.
Oh.
No. By which, I made puzzles, read books, we watched TV. You're completely lazy. It was great.
Oh, what's the books that you read?
What was I reading? I read, I can't remember when I finished. I read Yuval Noah Harari's Nexus recently. I don't know if that was during that break, but that was somewhere over the sort of January period. That was quite fascinating. I've started rereading the Rivers of London series, which it's kind of it's a magical police procedural. So it's British. It's the British Metropolitan Police, but the magic department. So it's kind of like The Bill, but with Harry Potter as the main character. Wow. So yeah, I got into them 2 or 3 years ago. I think I had a month off over January, and I discovered it, and I bought every book up to that point. And smash through them. They're an easy read. They're not difficult, which is good to sort of switch off to. But since then, there's been 3 new novels released, which I've been gifted and are on my shelf, but I haven't read. But it's been so long that I've gone back to the start to reread the series. So I'm on my way through that series.
That's be good.
I really enjoy it. And again, it's easy. It's Roz is a big fan of like epic fantasy stuff. She loves the Brandon Sanderson and the Robin Hobb and all that kind of like massive world building kind of things. I don't go for that myself, but so the fact that this reads like a episode of The Bill or Law and Order, but it's a magical world is kind of enough of a pull, and it's just it's fun. It really dry English sense of humour. And the guy obviously loves London. Like the author just loves London, and all of these geographic references and sly offhand comments, which I don't understand because I'm not a Londoner, but it's one of those kind of like when you watch The Simpsons and there's a pop culture reference that you know is a pop culture reference even if you don't get it. It's that kind of thing, like, oh, that was a sarcastic comment about such and such. I don't know why it's sarcastic and why it's funny, but I get that it's there. So, yeah, lots of that, which is really nice. So, yeah, I really like that. Oh, that was the other one I read. This is a recommendation from a lady at church to read Dave Mitchell's Unruly. So it's the history of the English kings.
Oh, yes, I think you've brought this up before.
Have I?
Yeah.
Ah, right. Okay. So it was a recommendation from a friend at church. She said the only history that should be written is by comedians. So I'm like,
That's nice.
so yes. So I read that, and it was good. A lot of the early stuff I didn't really know, and then it started to get. I mean, the Tudors, I kind of know a bit more about, particularly because they factor so heavily in Reformation history.
Right.
But yeah, it was good. And again, like David Mitchell, English, sarcastic, dry sense of humour all the way through. So I appreciated that. So that's what I was reading.
Oh, good.
How about you? How was your break?
Did you just stay at home though?
I just stayed at home. I didn't go
Wow.
anywhere. No.
Okay.
No.
I don't know if you call it a break for me. It was. I kind of had 2 weeks off to a degree, but a lot of that was spent switching my children's rooms,
Right.
which is a much larger undertaking than we first believed it would be.
Did you get to do any repainting and redecorating?
We did. We had to repaint one room.
Okay.
The other one had already been painted. And redecorating, I wouldn't call it that. I think it was just more, okay, so now that we've moved and it's a different room, it's a different cupboard situation, now we need more furniture. And also because we moved my two girls into their own room, but they have their own beds rather than sleeping in a bunk.
Ah, yes.
But then, so we have to put something in between. So it was a lot of IKEA furniture building as well. And then the moving of the rooms just turned our house into a bomb site, which stresses me out quite a lot. And also because I would say my wife was project manager on this job. And the thing that stresses me out is there's a lot of mess in my way and I don't know where to move it, but I don't know where to put it because I don't know what we're using it for.
Right.
I don't know what the purpose is. So what do you do next to actually make this happen? And so I found that break a little bit stressful because of that. I was on edge.
Okay.
Which probably to my detriment and probably to my shame that I should be able to just get over it and get through it. But it was a little bit difficult for me.
Okay.
Just because I like a little bit of clarity when I come home and know it. And it wasn't even my wife's fault or anything. I'm not blaming her or anything. It's just like you had to take stuff out of both rooms. But that's in that room for a reason. It doesn't go in the lounge room. It doesn't go in the kitchen. It's not there, but you have to put it there. So then it takes up space in a room that's not meant to have something that's in there.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So that was tiring for me. But that was okay. And all three children seem very happy with their current scenario. So
Excellent.
That's really good.
Yeah, good.
I have two girls and they love to collect things.
Yep.
And so to sort some of that stuff out probably worked really well. But I'm wondering how long it's going to be until it just happens in the other room.
Are they good at culling their own collections?
I would say one of them, because she's older, maybe a little bit more than the younger one.
Yep.
Because there is about 4 or so years difference in between them, their ages. But still, you're like, why are you collecting that? You don't need to collect that. And there's they have these things of just putting so much stuff in bags and then just moving it around the house.
Right, okay.
You're like, you don't need to do that. But again, it's just me being an adult and not allowing a child to actually experience
Childhood.
Childhood.
Yeah.
Which is I'm sure I did something of that ilk.
Let them run free, Joel.
Let them run free. Completely
Yeah.
run free?
Yeah, completely.
No boundaries whatsoever?
No, boundaries are,
What have you described as not authoritarian, authoritative?
Yeah, so there's a difference between authoritarian and authoritative.
Tative.
Yeah, and so you can kind of, if you imagine a 2x2 matrix, and on one side you have control, and the other side you have love, and so then you can have higher low of each, or higher, yeah. And so the best kind of parenting is high control and high love, and that's authoritative. So there's clear boundaries between parent-child. There's clear expectations, and you hold them to expectations, and it's done within a context of really high love. So authoritarian is the definition of high control, low love. So that's where you're really, you're a bossy parent, you're an angry parent, you're a very controlling parent, and the child doesn't know that you love them. So you're not expressive of love. And then on sort of low control, you can either have low control, high love, and that can be very free flowing. Yeah, do whatever you want. I love you. And then low of both, low control, low love is neglectful. So there's a number of sociological studies and long-term studies that have looked at that and worked out that if you can be an authoritative parent, which is, yes, there are high expectations and high boundaries, but it's done within a context of high love, and they know that, and they experience it, and so they know when you ask to do something that it's done with their best interest in mind. They can actually understand that it comes from a place of love, even if they don't understand it. Then that's kind of the where you want to keep working towards as a parent.
Is the word control kind of a loaded term though?
Maybe.
Because you could be. I'm just asking you. Like, could that be perceived as controlling?
Right. Okay.
Like too controlling, maybe.
Well, I mean,
maybe as you
sure,
said,
maybe
high controlling, low love.
Yeah.
If the child or children understand that it comes from a place of high love, that they're not actually being controlled. They're being saying like there's a boundary here.
Yeah, I mean, there's right boundaries, and I mean there are boundaries everywhere, and having to stop at stop signs, and at red lights. I mean, that's pretty controlling. Why shouldn't I be able to drive however I want?
Just blast through these lights.
Yeah, that's right. And I had experience probably about 10 years ago now, when I went to Uganda with my, at the time, CEO for YouthWorks. We did a trip over there, and I didn't have to drive, thank goodness, but being a passenger in the car, and there is no control on the streets. Like it's just this chaos of cars. Somehow it works, but without anyone paying attention to red lights, green lights. I mean, there might as well not be traffic lights, the way that everyone just kind of moves around. Right. There's no giving way to pedestrians. You take your life in your hands if you try and cross a street, because they just keep on moving, and realised, actually I quite like the control of Sydney, and the fact that 99.9% of people obey traffic lights and stop signs and roundabouts and do the right thing on the road. Then that's So control can be really beneficial, and so I think in that context, the right kind of authority is good. It's good for us. Yeah,
you could make the same argument, of course, about how some people who are not Christians would argue that God is controlling, and there's a whole lot of rules to follow.
Yeah, and rightly so.
Right.
Yeah. But and this is, I think, like, it does have a theological edge, because it's not, I think particularly in sort of a postmodern world, like the deconstruction of hierarchies is a key part of the postmodernism. And so you want to deconstruct power, you want to deconstruct authority, deconstruct hierarchies. Hierarchies are typically seen as not to be trusted. And as a Christian, you can notice that there have been times when power has been abused, and hierarchies can't be trusted, and institutions might have flaws, and all those kinds of things. Yeah. But I don't think a faithful Christian can ever get to a point where you say, no, power imbalance is not inherently evil, because there is an inherent power imbalance between God and humanity, creator and creation. And so there must be appropriate hierarchies. There must be a good way to express power, if we're going to take God seriously as God and not see ourselves as equals. So from there, you can then flow down to, okay, well, what are the appropriate authority and power structures? And I think the difference between an unhealthy power structure and a healthy power structure is, how is the person in power using their power? Yeah. And so, as Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So the difference between a superhero and a supervillain is one uses the power to serve others and one uses the power to serve themselves. And that's where when postmodernism looks at power structures and typically highlights all the times when power has been used to serve themselves and goes, well, so therefore power is bad. And I think as Christians we need to say, oh, okay, that use of power might have been bad, but let's not deconstruct the idea of power per se. And so I think in God's good design, parent-child is an appropriate power structure. There is an appropriate hierarchy and appropriate control. And it must be used in a way where the parent is using the outsized power that they have in order to serve and love the child and bring them to a flourishing humanness. And so that's going to be part of that.
Do you think also with that, like that postmodernism you're talking about, is the pursuit of a freedom equals the no limits? I think that's the other thing. Like in terms of talking about the control and stuff, is that perhaps our societal or worldly interpretation of freedom means that I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, at any time or place. But I think it was a recent sermon that maybe Stu was talking about, was that there's actually more freedom in actually having limits, which is what God gives us, I think, and he gives that to us in relationship, rather than like the parent-child relationship we talked about, rather than that has interpreted draconian, high control, low love kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's why perhaps people that say God is controlling, he's telling you what to do, it's limiting, all those kind of things, they're not really seeing the fact that it's actually given in relationship, and God wants to restore that relationship with his people. And so I thought it was really cool that, I think we've gone on a tangent here, but I think it was actually quite a good one, is that it's this power. It's interesting how a parent-child relationship so often models what God is to us, maybe as adults, and children, but that it's almost like a mirror. I think the parent-child relationship is a mirror to how God wants us to live. But the problem is you've got a parent and child are both sinful, and God is not, obviously.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But I mean, God uses language of father to describe himself in both Old and New Testament to describe that. And so it's an analogy of language, but it's what he's trying to express in that is what we can all imagine the best kind of father, regardless of what our fathers have been. There's, even by difference, like if we've had crap fathers, you're kind of like, well, I recognise that that's a rubbish way of being a father. Why do I know that? Because I know what a good father looks like. And actually God is the perfect father. So all of those things we either did get to I had a pretty good father. He's a great dad, but not perfect because he's human. But I can look to him and go, the way that he loved me and served me in these particular ways, isn't it great that, God is that, but perfect. And for those who had, absent fathers, abusive fathers, neglectful fathers, all those things I didn't get from my dad, I actually get through God, because he is the ultimate and perfect father. And so, it's not without reason that God uses that language to try and draw us into that imaginative analogy that we can go, oh, that's what God is like to me. He is like the perfect father.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think as we, to go back to the idea of how do we parent, it's important that we help our kids see that God is their perfect father as well. So to be able to say to our kids, hey, I'm not perfect. I will stuff up. And if there are particular examples, like, I should not have got frustrated when you did this. Yeah. That was me, not you. Yeah. Yes, you did the wrong thing here, but I should not have reacted like that. So please forgive me for the fact that I overreacted and I got angry when I shouldn't have got angry at that. And somewhere in that conversation, which might happen over hours, days, whatever, to draw them back to, God is the perfect father, and I will stuff up and I will not be perfect towards you all the time, but God is always perfect. And so he ultimately is your perfect father. And so as Christian parents, we're also trying to draw our kids up to that vision as well.
Sometimes I try really hard to do that with my kids. I remember there was a quote from, I think it's Dr. Becky Kennedy. She's a parenting expert, non-Christian, as far as I know. But she talks about that more important than like being a good parent or doing the right thing all the time is actually repair. with your children.
Yeah.
And I think I always try to tell my children, God and his son Jesus have set the standard for repair. They've restored the broken relationship between us and God by Jesus dying on the cross. And the thing that I sometimes worry about is that I do that is that I'm worried that they feel like they have to be responsible for my feelings.
Oh, sure.
And so I say, look, I'm sorry, I haven't done this. Like something similar to what you're saying. I was still frustrated, you didn't listen to me, et cetera, but I shouldn't have reacted that way. I shouldn't have been like that. And then maybe I'm asking you this question, is that then I say, look, I think this is why I did it, but it doesn't mean I should have done it this way. Do you think that's a good way to talk to your children like that? More just asking out of a personal interest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to name your own sin.
Yeah.
And so this is where I guess the love aspect of that matrix comes in, is the recognition that I'm sinful as a parent. And so this is where that was evident in this interaction. So you can name that.
Yeah.
You judge individual parents and child's going to have different ways of doing this, but there will be times when it's appropriate to notice their sin as well. And again, this comes from there is this power imbalance, and part of a good parent's role is to correct and discipline their child in appropriate ways. And so there are going to be times when you notice and point out and communicate what you did here that was not okay.
Like you hit your sister or something.
Yeah, you hit your sister. You don't hit. And again, this is not necessarily in one conversation, but over time saying, because as Christians we love each other, we look after each other, and particularly as Christian parents raising Christian kids, you can say ultimately all of our sin is already paid for.
Yeah.
So the fact that you hit your sister and the fact that I then shouted at you, both of those were sinful. Isn't it awesome that Jesus has reconciled us individually to himself through the death of Jesus, and he also reconciles us to each other? So we can reset our relationship because our relationship with God is ultimately reset as well. And so I'm asking for your forgiveness for losing my temper and shouting at you when I should not have shouted at you. That was all on me. That was my sin. And I know, I've already talked to God about this. I've asked for his forgiveness. I know because of Jesus' once for all death on the cross and resurrection from the dead and my union with him in Christ. I mean, you're not going to say all this necessarily, but this is what's going on in the background of your conversation is I am reconciled to Christ. And so therefore, I know I'm forgiven in him, but we still need to restore personal interactive relationships with each other. And so it's still good and right to ask for forgiveness from your child or your partner or your parent or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's really key as well.
Well, I frame it as Jesus took ultimate responsibility for our sin.
Yeah.
So we can take responsibility for our sin, especially to each other in those situations. And I did get a little bit frustrated. My youngest daughter, was it last week? Might have been last Friday. I said, she wasn't getting ready when I needed her to get ready because I needed to take her somewhere before going probably somewhere. So it was more my selfishness coming out. But then in the afternoon, or when I saw her at night, something like that, I said, I'm sorry that I yelled at you this morning. And she's like, I forgot that you yelled at me. I was like, okay, that's a good one. I said, I'm sorry I yelled at you anyway. And she's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But there's something so beautiful, I think, of how quickly children forgive you.
Yeah.
When you ask for forgiveness and they go, oh, they've taken responsibility for the thing that made me sad or I didn't like or their sin or whatever you want to term it. And they just go, that's okay. And I'm probably an over-apologizer sometimes. And my son once said to me, you've said it.
Right, okay.
He was a bit younger and he's like, it's okay, you don't need to say sorry anymore.
Yeah.
You've said it, that's enough. And even then it's like, oh, again, and this is what I'm talking about the reflection of your child, your relationship with your child is the relationship that God has with you, is that the sin has been dealt on the cross. Now, that doesn't mean you go and keep doing it, right, as we said, but to see that's what I love. And I something I was really inspired by was, and this is something we're going to talk about, is that you're going on another podcast. You're a co-host of another podcast.
I am.
The Crossway Kidmin podcast.
Cross-formed kids.
Cross-formed. I keep saying Crossway, sorry. It's cross-formed. And so those guys are in America.
Yep.
Which is cool. But in part of the conversation you're having, you've had, I think,
there's
three episodes out?
Yeah, at the time of this recording, I think there's released 4 episodes that I've been on.
Oh, okay.
The first one, so it's called the Cross-Formed Kids podcast, so people can go check that out. The first episode was them interviewing me about my book.
Yes.
But then, I mean, it had already been lined up. But
A Child in God's Church.
A Child in God's Church, thank you.
A child or the child?
The Child in God's Church.
Okay, cool. I thought I said the child and you said a child, but it doesn't matter. Keep going.
The child, yeah, the child in God's Church.
In God's Church.
But yes, as we had been talking about that, they had then actually said, hey, look, one of their other co-hosts, Sam Luce, has moved on to other projects. And so they were considering a third co-host. And so, yeah, we came about in our back and forth conversations, and we had a few video chats about it. They said, hey, we were really thinking, we'd love for you to actually be the third co-host long term, which is great, other than the time zones, having to work out how to record with 2 in America and 1 in Sydney.
5 o'clock in the morning.
I get up at 5 a.m. and we record together, which is lots of fun. Sometimes my voice is probably sounding a bit raspy from maybe having just got out of bed. So yeah, but it's great. Yeah. And I mean, there was a relationship that was already there. We used the Cross-Formed Kids curriculum at church. We've been using that for just over a year. I had conversations with one of the guys even earlier than that while I was still working for YouthWorks, just about the curriculum and thinking it through. And so it was a bit of an existing relationship, which is forming into a really lovely friendship and partnership in this podcast. So
the 3 episodes that I've listened to, you're great.
Thank you.
Spoke so well and it truly sounded like an expert in children's ministry. But what I really enjoyed in part of the conversation was, I think it's Hunter that you were having the discussion with, and he was saying, perhaps maybe voicing a little bit of frustration of how much we can learn from children. And he was doing stuff like, he was saying that during their teaching time, whatever they do at their church, he asked them, like, give us your most curly questions that you can think of and stuff like that.
I really like that.
But again, I think it's mirroring, and I think sometimes we lose this fact of how much we can learn from our children. Yeah. That's where I was trying to get to. And that's why I was really inspired why I'm talking to you about this now, is that they can do it in such a simple way. And as Jesus says, like, we need to have faith like a child rather than... Why as adults do we complicate things so much sometimes? That's what it feels like. So it's cool that you're on that podcast now. It'd be lovely if people jump over there, because it's a really fun podcast, and I think I learned heaps listening to it as well. Really, I was just listening to it because I thought, yes, Tim's on it. This is going to be good, or at least support you in that. And I'm like, I think I'll probably keep listening to this because it's really... It continues to open my mind. It's something that I'm passionate about, is just loving and respecting children. But the ability, it opened my eyes, like I said, to the way, I think the order and the structure of the way that God has created the world. Children, like him, families, children, and how it's not just, we're talking about like power down, but there's an influence up from the youngest. And I know that's why intergenerational ministry is one of the main reasons intergenerational ministry is such a passion of yours as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there is this, so we talk theologically that like, there are hierarchies, and they're obviously between creator and creation, so God and us. There are other good and right hierarchies and power structures in the world. And I think parent-child is one of those. Obviously, government, populace is another one that can be corrupted, and we've seen plenty of examples of that in history, but is also a God-given dynamic. Yeah, I just read that in Romans 13 is kind of one of the key one that people go to. Yep. So
where was I going with that? Oh, yeah, sorry. But there is also, particularly in the church and in Christ, there is this beautiful reciprocity and mutuality as well. And so they're a couple of key terms that get used in intergenerational conversation.
I love that.
To talk about how those who are maybe younger, less powerful, less influential will still have voice that is honoured and respected and listened to in the church. And so the intergenerational conversation between adults and children is that adults are still willing to listen to and learn from children. And so that's part of that intergenerational piece is this this mutuality again. So there is a sort of, particularly from Karl Marx onwards, there is this kind of overthrow narrative that those who are less powerful need to overthrow the more powerful in order to have their voice heard. So he talked about that, economically, and then people bring that into other social sciences and political structures and whatnot.
Power structure.
Whatever power structure. So it is assumed from a sort of a Marxist type framework that the right answer to a corrupt power structure is to invert the power structure and those less vulnerable to become more vulnerable. Sorry, those who are more vulnerable to overthrow the more powerful, more influential, in order to have voice.
Yep.
And I think the Christian answer is, well, no. I think, like Karl Marx, you can sort of notice where power dynamics have gone wrong and might be causing harm, not good. But the Christian answer is not an overthrow, but it's actually a mutuality and a reciprocity, where you don't need to get rid of the power structure, but those, again, like I said earlier, those who have more power are using their power and influence to listen to those who are less powerful and to learn from. And that doesn't erode the power structure. It doesn't necessarily get rid of the hierarchy, but it allows for this beautiful mutuality and reciprocity to be explored and to shine through. And where we get that theologically is where Paul talks about, we're all co-adopted. There is no man or woman, slave or free, Greek or Gentile. And what he's saying there is it's not that those categories don't exist; they still clearly exist. And it's not even that the power imbalance between some of those stops existing. It means that we're all mutually saved by Jesus. So an adult is no more or less saved in Jesus than a child is. And an adult has no more or less status in the kingdom of God than the child does. They're no more or less a disciple of Jesus than the adult is, or that the pastor is, or that the Bible college trained senior minister is, and so there is time in the church where you have to say, yes, the senior minister, particularly in a system like the Anglican system where you get ordained, you get set apart by the diocese, by the bishops who give you a delegated authority to preach the word and to be a shepherd. So there is a right honouring of that, and there is also where the senior minister who has been ordained and honoured in that way can sit down with the 5-year-old and listen to them and learn from them, because at the end of the day, in the kingdom of God, they are equal value and worth, and saved by the same Jesus. So honoured. So you've got both of those dynamics happening at the same time in the church, and that's what I think intergenerational ministry is trying to play around with, is this idea of how do you have leaders of children's ministry who are still learning from the children? What does that look like? So there's some things you can play around with. I really
like, but as you're saying, like all in the better, from one of a better word, even playing with field, because we've seen the ultimate power and authority to God, right? Rather than trying to find other power structures. So we're trying to, that theological argument, isn't it? Or not argument, a theological posture is to go, but God is ultimate authority, and therefore how do we look at those things beforehand? Whereas someone like Marx or someone else, I would suggest, is probably saying that isn't the ultimate authority. Therefore, we need to find where the power is first in order to overthrow that.
Yeah, and ultimately, like Marxism is coming from an atheistic point of view. So there is no larger reality of a created God communicating with a created people. So that gives us that theological distinction between creator and creation that sets up the expectation that there is such a thing as a good hierarchy and a good power system that can actually be for the flourishing of all people. And so if you remove that as your foundation of the system, then all you have then is power struggles, and a number of other postmodern philosophers and philosophers and sociologists and economics have sort of played around with that idea. And I'm trying to think of the name now, slipped my mind. Is it Foucault? That everything is power. Everything is a struggle for power and a striving after power, and so that's just the way the world is. And there's nothing beyond that. Yeah.
And then it's funny, it just reminded me of I finished Tom Holland's book Dominion in the holiday, so that was a good thing for me to finish. And he talks about even while Marx tried to throw off a lot of Christian, what's the right word? Christian structures.
Yeah.
Tom makes the argument that Marx is still shaped by Christian things about class struggle. The communist idea of like each looking after earlier people from each according to his ability, each according to his needs, reminds you of the early Christian community in Acts who sold goods and distributed to all as they had need and things like that. So I think that's also something else that's been really on my mind lately is after reading Dominion and going, I wonder if there is kind of that postmodern things that you were talking about earlier, is that, does Christianity matter to many people anymore? But in a reality, if I take Holland's argument correctly, he's saying that we are so steeped in Christian values that those that aren't Christians don't even realize it, and it becomes this thing of trying to, I think there's this contrast between throwing off God as the ultimate authority and then trying to become your own authority, so therefore creating different power structures. Whereas if we cede those power structures to God, it creates a much different reality. And I think that's where Holland's trying to go with that. Yeah,
I mean, I actually haven't read Dominion yet, so you can correct me, but my understanding from listening to Tom Holland a number of times is there's an argument there that Marx could only have come out of a Christian world.
That's right, yeah.
So we sort of associate now, post-Marx, that those who care for the underprivileged and the vulnerable typically tend to be the progressives, which typically tend to be, somehow, thinking in a Marxist type framework. So therefore, caring for the vulnerable, caring for the oppressed is something that those progressive Marxist people type do. And then you realise, actually, you go back to Deuteronomy and you have God saying to his people as they're about to enter the promised land, he says, remember, you were slaves and I have reached down, I have brought you up, I am about to place you here, and you better, by golly, look after the widow, the fatherless and the alien. And if you do not look after the widow, the fatherless and the alien, then I'm going to come against you in judgment. And it's just like, oh, hold on, is God a Marxist? It's like, no, of course not. He's not only predating him by centuries, but you realise, and so I think this is one of the things that Tom Holland notices is that it is uniquely, Jewish there, and then through Christ, Christian perspective to actually care for vulnerable people. And so what Marx has done centuries later, steeped in this Western European history of Christendom, which actually starts to care for the vulnerable, creates hospitals, creates education systems, creates welfare systems, creates, rights in terms of work placement and jail rights and all these kinds of type of things that come out of this Christian worldview. But you strip away the perspective of having an ultimate God who has set these things up, and you just come at from a purely secular, atheistic point of view. So he's noticing the same things in a way that the Christian world and the words of Scripture have noticed, which is God is a God who cares for vulnerable people. But stripped of the authority of Scripture and stripped of a right honouring of God as the God who is the one who set all this in motion, is where you end up, with this characterisation that it's the non-Christian secular progressives that care for vulnerable people, which is, in some ways it's tragic that that's more what they're known for than what the church is known for. But that's not always the case as well. There's still plenty of really beautiful Christian charities and organisations that do that. And I think, Anglicare in Sydney is a really great example of doing that wonderfully well in all of the things that they're doing. So, big shout out to Anglicare as one of many, many, many Christian organisations that are actually doing exactly that, caring for the widow, the orphan, the alien, and other vulnerable peoples. Yeah,
there's a little quote here about the irony of Marx's stance, according to Tom Holland, where he argues that despite Karl Marx's professed materialism and explicit opposition to religion, his moral commitments and vision of historical transformation borrow imagery and energy that historically derive from Christian moral traditions.
Yeah.
And then that means that his atheistic rejection did not make his worldview fully free from Christian influence.
No. And if I remember correctly, Tom's story of how he came to write Dominion was because he's an ancient historian, he was steeped in the world of Rome, and ancient Rome, ancient Greek, and realising, hold on, things that we just assume, like charity and caring for vulnerable, are just not there. And he goes, that's weird. And so people who say, our democracy, our ideas of democracy and our ideas of care, is kind of Greek philosophy plus Roman, put together. And he's like, actually, no, none of those had all the things that we hold dear, even as a secular Western cultures. The only place you get those things is from a Christian worldview. And so the West is haunted by Christianity, even if they've tried to strip Christ out of it. There's that idea. And so Tom Holland's done that. And again, he's not a man of faith, but an explicit Christian who has done a really good job at saying the same thing is Glenn Scrivener, who's an Australian living in the UK. He's done some really great, I think it's his book called The Air We Breathe, I think is the name of the book.
I think so.
And pretty much argues the same thing. It's not as big a book as Dominion, but he's also an explicit, he's a Christian, but making that same argument that it's everything we assume is, everything we like about our Western pluralistic, secular, postmodern world, has Christian foundations.
Yeah, and that's The Air We Breathe is the correct.
Yes, good.
Is the correct title. So well done by Glenn Scrivener. The other thing that kind of making me think this at the same time is my son is very interested in mathematics, as you would know. He's not to make too fine of a point of it, but he is very gifted in maths, and he's finished the Year 10 curriculum, and he's only just starting high school this year. But we found these free lecture series on, it was from Hillsdale College, and there's one on Euclid and how he's shaped modern mathematics, basically. And Euclid is a mathematician from Egypt. I think that's right. I have to check I get confused with he's Egyptian or Greek, but I think he was Egyptian.
Okay.
But he basically wrote the textbook, which is Euclid's Elements. That remained the textbook for people teaching maths for 2,000 years after he wrote it. Like, it's insane. Incredible. And it's because he brought a whole lot of disparate areas of maths and brought them together.
Yep. Okay.
Including things like the Pythagoreans weren't really at the stage to understand maths in the abstract, and the Greeks took that further. So there was more in the ancient Egyptian times it's more just like pebbles in the sand, you owe me this, things like that.
Right, yeah.
Pythagoras obviously took that further. So, you've got Pythagoras' theorem and all that kind of stuff. But because they based everything on number, they say that it was basically a limiting factor of how maths was understood, and the Greeks took it further and be able to take it into the abstract. But that was because they moved towards geometry being the basis of all maths rather than number, which is what the Pythagorean Egyptians did. But Euclid kind of brought it together I think that's, and I would love someone to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm still only in lecture 4 of a 10 lecture series on this. But at the same time, Leo, my son, he's been reading a book by John Lennox, a very small book and it's called Can Science Explain Everything? And really I'm bringing this up, similar to kind of understanding the Christian worldview influencing people who even specifically name they're not Christian, is this lecture series, like I'm not very good at maths. Let's make that clear. My son teaches me. He's 11 and he teaches me stuff all the time about maths. But what I find really interesting is if I found that if I was taught maths from that historical point of view, I reckon I would have got a lot better. I would have understood maths a lot better.
Yeah.
But as I said, he teaches me a lot more. But the cool thing that these two things come together is John Lennox, who's a Christian writer, Christian scientist, and then learning about how maths has developed and reading Dominion as well. So I've got these 3 things that have kind of come together, is using maths to understand the beauty and order and creativity of God, which I find really interesting. Now, I don't have a specific question for you, Tim, but is that something that appeals to you? Do you find that an interesting thing to look at? I know you do it from a sociological point of view, but I've never really seen, and I mean, I might sound a bit naive here, but I've never really seen maths as that, and now I'm quite interested in maths, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, is there a curiosity? Do you have a similar curiosity when it comes to something like maths or science?
I don't think maths has ever grabbed me. I've heard John Lennox speak a number of times about the beauty of maths.
He is brilliant.
I mean, he's just lovely to listen to. If you ever, I think I saw him. Did I see him once? I think he came out for a conference once in Sydney.
He spoke at Innerborough School, which is close to us. Once.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
But they couldn't fit any more in the people in the place.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
He's brilliant. Yeah.
And again, just this lovely lilting. I don't know what his accent is.
I think he's Northern Irish.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So, yes, I have heard him talk about his love for science and particularly the mathematical foundations of science. It's never that aspect has never particularly grabbed me. One of the things, and I'm sure I've talked about this before, that I do love, and this is kind of getting into science, particularly natural sciences, is I love ecosystems. And the reason I love ecosystem theories is because of their inherent complexity. And I love that the world is complex. I love that there aren't simple answers. And so I think I find something very beautiful about that. That all of these interconnecting worlds all have to happen together. I've been talking to my daughter. She's from a very young age, she was very keen to do something to do with animals, and she's gone through different phases of that. She wanted to be a veterinarian, wanted to be a farmer, wanted to be a zookeeper, and so she's but always like the focus on wanting to hang out with animals has always been one of her things. Yeah. One of the things that she's really into at the moment is zoography, and this is basically the study of the interaction that an animal and its environment has with each other. And and so this is one of her most current little things that she's really fascinated by, and thinking about, how do I study that after school? And so, and so we're thinking about that. But it's that kind of thing that I really fascinate as well. It's just animals and their environment plus the climate system. I mean, all of these things just have such a delicate balance with each other. So I think that kind of the beauty and the complexity, I suppose, is where I kind of get to. And seeing God's handiwork in all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I just asked ChatGPT to do a summary of what John Lennox says about maths, explaining the beauty of God's creation, and he frames it. There's a few things that he frames it as. Mathematics as intrinsic beauty, which is basically expressing God's creation in that way, but because of that beauty and order in maths, it points to something bigger, so it points back to God,
right?
As well. And therefore you have a deeper reflection on creation, and so that mathematical beauty isn't just a quirk; it's an evidence of a rational, ordered structure of the universe. So then you think about it more, and it's been who it's been created by, and it's also a language of the creation as well. And his key idea, I like this little quote here. The order, harmony, and beauty we see in the mathematical description of nature shows us not just how the universe works, but that it is intelligible, and that intelligibility is the most plausibly rooted in a creator who is himself rational and beautiful.
Okay.
And that's why I'm getting excited about it, because I've never seen maths that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, when I've got a son who's like loves maths but maybe haven't seen it that way together, it's like a shared experience for it. And it's like, and I think sometimes he has a fear that he is a Christian and that people say, oh, science is better. Science is more rational.
Right.
And so reading this book by John Lennox has helped him understand it's like, actually, there's a different way to look at it, that actually believing in God is actually, as Lennox argues, a rational and reasonable way to actually think about the world. That God did create it.
Yeah. And Lennox is a great champion of that.
He's brilliant.
Particular view of course you can be a Christian and a scientist, and almost to the point of how on earth could you be a scientist and not be a Christian?
He is a bit like that, isn't he?
Yeah. And again, a very lovely, gentle kind of way. But yeah, how could you not see the beauty and the creator behind the creation in all of this? So yeah, for people who are interested in science, mathematics, if you haven't heard of John Lennox, sorry for mental, my brain slowed down for a sec there. If you haven't heard of John Lennox, yeah, definitely check him out. Yeah,
there's the last thing that I listened to him that he did, he's done so many debates, like he's debated Hitchens and all the Alex O'Connor, who's like the big atheist YouTuber. I appreciate Alex because he's very measured, but he had John on his podcast, and the discussion between those two, even though they disagree, they're actually having a genuine conversation, trying to understand each other's point of view.
Yes.
And John does that thing of like, I mean, whatever I've seen him in debates, he's never lost a debate. You can win a debate, but it's much easier, I think, to lose a debate through, your emotional reaction or something. He's so humble but not compromising the gospel, that he's basically argues in a way, I think, to go, well, it's up to you. It's up to you to believe. And I think that's a very impressive and humble way to go. I'm pointing to God. I already believe in him. Here's why. Now it's up to you to believe. And that's that rational idea and the beauty of the creation that he's trying to pull out.
He a number of times, particularly when he's on Justin Brierley's podcast, whether it's Unbelievable or a couple of the new ones that he's got, he tells his story of when he was offered a job, and it was quite a prestigious job with a prestigious place, but the offer was like, but you really need to give up this Christian thing.
Right.
And he just has this lovely way of telling the story.
Yeah.
But so you're saying that, that the God of the entire cosmos, who knows me personally through the death and resurrection of his son Jesus, and the security that gives me now as a human being, and the hope that gives me that I'll be in relationship with him for now and for all time and into all of eternity, you would love to give that up for this job?
See, that's what I mean. He puts it back on there.
He goes, that's a strange thing to ask. Thank you very much. See you later. and again, it just is beautiful.
Because he is a genius.
Oh, yes.
Like, he's so smart.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, he's like, I'm good with God.
Yep.
And it's up to you to either believe in him or you choose to reject him. It's a very impressive way.
Yeah.
He manages to do that. So, okay. So, last thing I thought we could talk about. We're going into 2026.
We are.
Well, we are in 2026.
2020. We're near in the future.
I've got a question for you. You actually told us, and I think you put it on the podcast, that the community group or Bible study that you lead, you've basically come up with a word for that year.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Now, what I was going to say, though, the Cambridge Dictionary word of the year is parasocial.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if we can fuse these two things together.
Okay.
I want to know have you got your word for this year for your community group yet?
Yeah, parasocial.
You want your community group to be striving to be more parasocial.
Have parasocial relationships with God and each other.
Oh,
no.
Well, that would be better. But actually, no, would it?
No, it wouldn't be. No,
it wouldn't be.
It's not a good word. No, I do. I've got my word ready.
Oh,
no.
Go and tell us, and then we'll compare it to parasocial.
Oh, right, compare it. Actually, mine's a continuation of last year because partly because I don't think I actually necessarily grew a lot in this last year. So one of the things that has really stood out to me is the idea of abiding. And so John 15, where Jesus talks about the vine and the branches. And so this is the verse that I've had on a sticky on my desktop all year. And I keep reading it and I want to keep coming back to it. Is I am the vine, you are the branches. If you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not abide in me, you're like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown away into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. So that abide is kind of my word. Has been for a year and it continues to need to be, I think, because that's what I want to grow in. So the challenge I give to all of my Bible study is there an aspect of discipleship that you would like to particularly focus on growing and developing this year? And so for some it's been ideas of patience or humility or quietness. It's been being able to give things over to God and not hold things so tightly. All sorts of bits and pieces like that have come up over the last number of years. And so for me, it is abide. I want to keep growing in knowing what it means to actually abide in Jesus and be with him and sit with him and live in him and do that more and more each day. So, so that's my word.
Yeah, that's good. But then you also said parasocial is not a good word.
No.
So we should explain what that means. So basically, it's a parasocial relationship is a one-way or a relationship felt by someone between themselves and a famous person they don't know, which I would suggest perhaps is increased with the advent of content creators, YouTubers, social media. There's people that we think, I probably have fallen into this trap to somewhat, that I've watched someone's videos over many of their videos, and then I think I know them. I don't know them at all.
Well, and this is the thing, like in some sense you do, but it's not. It's only one way, and I think so. There's a number of things. One is that you only know a version of them. You only know for those who have intentionally put themselves out there. You only know what they've said of themselves and put out there. We were talking about this in the staff room just before we came to record, like the idea of celebrity and that the royals are a good example of they've been sort of celebrity for centuries, well before the internet and social media. People had this parasocial relationship with the royals. They were really intrigued by what happened in the palace and what happened at Buckingham, and so and so the queen is now or the princess is now engaged, and so I mean all of the you can watch footage of Queen Elizabeth's coronation and just sort of see people were highly involved there well before internet celebrity. So it's and had a parasocial relationship with royalty, and there would have been a number of people, but not very many, who were celebrity enough to actually have this relationship with, but I think what the rise of Hollywood, the rise of motion picture, obviously, has created celebrities.
Paparazzi.
Paparazzi, yep. You had I remember in the 90s, there was big conversations about people, you started to get this group of people who were famous for being famous and not anything else. And so the classic examples were kind of like the Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton relationship. And it's like, what have they actually done? They actually haven't, like they're both heiresses to fortunes, but they, other than that, they were celebrities without being famous for a particular thing. So they weren't famous for their output; they were just famous for who they were themselves.
The Kardashians have taken that.
Kardashians are the same thing, you know. And again, like, not to discredit the business savvy that obviously exists in the whole Kardashian world, but a lot of it was it started as we're celebrities for being celebrity, we're famous for being famous, and so you can feel like after 15 seasons of Meet the Kardashians or whatever it is that you actually know this family. Now, of course, they couldn't care less about you. They don't know you, and they don't think about you at all, ever, other than an aggregate on their, you know, how's our numbers doing. So that's the part of this parasocial. It's one way. It's not real, but we can do it as well. And I think it's the same thing. And when I said, I corrected you, you kind of know the person. So I think about some of the podcasters, or, you know, preachers or pastors, or Christian authors who, you know, I can think of a couple of people whose podcasts I have listened to for 10 plus years. So, I mean, I do know them fairly well. Now, they don't know me from Parasocial, but I know them to the extent that and particularly the podcasting format and the long form podcasting format, where people share a lot more about themselves, a lot more honestly, maybe that's in scare quotes potentially, but they do share a lot more of their selves, their lives. And
it feels more authentic.
It feels more authentic, yeah. Yep. And so you actually do know them fairly well in one sense, but it is only one way. And so there's this parasocial relationship with celebrity, whether it be podcasting celebrity or royal celebrity or Hollywood celebrity. What's interesting in this Cambridge word of the year is the noticing that it's extending beyond celebrity to actually AI. So now they talked about how people are having, so that AI bots have joined celebrities as objects of parasocial devotion. So people are having parasocial relationships with their chatbot. And I don't remember, maybe people started talking about this with Siri, and you've got, you know, because you have to have a conversation back and forth. So that was kind of an early version of this. And now obviously ChatGPT and a number of things that have spawned from that. ChatGPT, was it 4 that kind of really sort of skyrocketed this latest boom in chat technology, is that people can have these parasocial relationships. And now there's whole companies whose whole model is around creating personas for you to have relationship with.
Companions, I think they're
companions, called. Yep. Some of them are intentionally emotionally, romantically. That was what I was trying to think of. Yeah. Romantically relational. Yep. You know, some of them are just you know, help therapists type role, psychology type role. And this goes back to, I mean, we talked about it a lot, and we're kind of like, oh, I don't want to talk about AI again. But this is part of that, you know, new world that we keep walking into, is people are putting onto technology or putting onto celebrity what they are lacking in the real world, and that's not a good thing. And again, we keep coming back to this, but the idea that God makes us for incarnate relationships. And so if your primary spiritual advice, learning, teaching is coming from a podcast or an online minister, then that's not a healthy version of spiritual formation. It's a great supplement, but it can't be your primary spiritual authority in your life. You actually need an in-person, real relationship. So it's great to listen to the Bible Project, but if Tim Mackey is your key spiritual influence, that's not a healthy place to be, because you actually need someone who is actually in relationship with you. Having a parasocial relationship with Tim Mackey can be super helpful and beneficial for a whole lot of different reasons, but it can't give you the pastoral relationships you actually need. And so obviously this gets really dangerous when we talk about therapy, when we talk about psychologists or sociologists. And then I think really tragically is the romantic relationship. Here is part of who we are is our romantic side, and putting aside all the conversation about the goodness and blessing of singleness, but there's a romantic part of us, and to find fulfillment of that romantic part of us in a parasocial digital companion is really tragic and really dehumanising. And so that needs to be something that I think we're going to increasingly wrestle with as a culture and society, and with people in our churches. There are going to be people in our churches who find themselves emotionally and relationally and romantically engaged in chatbots, and we need to, I think as pastors, need to work out how to be able to pastor them well.
And it harks back to our conversation about we're made to be incarnate.
That's right.
Well.
Yeah. In all of these things, whether it be a pastor-shepherd relationship, whether it be a romantic, whether it even just friendship, we're designed to be incarnate. And for all of the good that digital technologies can give us, they can't give us it's only ever going to be a shadow version of what we're actually craving and actually need.
Yeah, there was a part of that discussion we were having as a staff team before we came and recorded was one of the examples brought up was that when Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got engaged, that they posted it like it was some fans of Taylor Swift posted it like their close friend got engaged.
Yeah.
And as much as Taylor Swift perhaps tries to look after her fans, the vast majority have never spoken to her.
No.
Never had any kind of interaction with her. And do you think it's like an identity thing? You know how sometimes, a lot of the time, social media is presenting the best version of yourself. That maybe it's like, in that parasocial way, you're almost saying like, yeah, my friend is Taylor Swift, or I know so much about Taylor Swift that she is my friend. Like I'm that close to a celebrity. I wonder if that's a desire that people a hidden desire that people are actually trying. It's part of their identity. It's that I'm such a Taylor Swift fan that I know her really well, and I'm so excited for her to be engaged. Yeah,
there's an identity piece layered on with the social media performance piece. So not only do I have an identity, but I perform that identity to social media. And so I think social media has layered those on top of each other. So I think even before social media and the ability of, well before, the Web 2.0, where we contributed ourselves onto online things, we still had identity, and you wore it on your band T-shirt that you used to wear, or when you're in high school, the names that you would graffiti on your own pencil case or folder. Like these were all identity markers, and you might be the only one who likes the Misfits, and so you're doodling the Misfits or some punk band or whatever, and so you would have had, well before social media, you would have had people who were listening. Imagine Taylor Swift existed pre-social media. You would still have had a number of high school people who would have been doodling Taylor Swift lyrics and drawing pictures and being fans and expressing it in different ways and having it as part of their identity. You put that on top of the performative aspect of social media, and I think it heightens that idea of not only am I a fan, I want you to know that I'm a fan, and I'm broadcasting who I self is, and it happens for everything. I mean, I saw this week a friend of mine, put up that Rob Hurst, the drummer for Midnight Oil, passed away in the last week. Yeah. And so, a friend of mine put up a picture of him in his prime on the drums, and said, veiled Rob Hurst. So, there was that same sense of I'm sharing, and that's part of his identity as a Midnight Oil fan, as an Australian music fan, as a rock and roll fan, as someone who's particularly engaged. And, in the same way, there is a certain performative aspect of that, of saying, and, I'm communicating this. Now, for someone like me, I sort of grew up post Midnight Oil's heyday, so I kind of know them, enjoy some of their music, not really a fan, completely would have missed the fact that Rob Hurst passed away except for my friend. So in some ways it's informative. Go, oh, there we go. Rob Hurst passed away. That's really sad. But I didn't have a parasocial relationship with Rob Hurst like my friend presumably did, being half a generation older than me, and someone who'd followed his career, had probably seen him a few times. So there is that sharing of life there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's... So I suppose now what I'm trying to say is that your word was abide,
Yeah.
and we're comparing these two words. How do we move from parasocial to abiding?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, not that I've thought of it in these terms yet until right now, but perhaps what I'm striving for is I don't want a parasocial relationship with Jesus, like for all my joking earlier. Yeah,
the word is not parasocial.
The word's not parasocial. That it's, and I think this is part of what authentic faith is authentic faith is not just knowing about Jesus, but actually being in relationship with Jesus and living in obedience to Jesus. Mm-hmm. So, my little triptych that I use all the time, knowing, loving, and obeying King Jesus. So that's what faith is. And I think that partly by disposition, partly by theological heritage, partly, personality, the knowing Jesus and obeying Jesus are the bits of that triangle that I have less of a problem with. Not that I'm perfect in obeying Jesus, but it's that relational bit that I think is the bit of that triangle which I find hardest to express and to emotionally engage with. And that's why abide for me is that word. That's the bit I really want to grow in. Like I really want to grow in not just knowing about Jesus and following the commands, but genuinely having a relationship with him that is not parasocial, that is genuine and deep and relational and engaged in that kind of way. And so for my prayer life to become richer, for my conscious presence, my conscious acknowledgence of his continual presence with me to be richer. These are the kind of the aspects of him and of our relationship that I really want to grow in. And so I want to think through how do I do that? How do I structure my time, my activities, my whatever it is, in order to grow in that aspect, so that it's not a parasocial relationship where, I know Jesus. Yeah, I read the Bible all the time. Have you ever had a conversation with anyway, they're kind of off the cuff thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's good and a good way to wrap it up, I think. It's our first episode of 2026, as you said. But there's always the way the new segment newish segment that we wrap it up is Tim's takeaway. So we talked about, all of a sudden we went on this huge tangent about how God, our
That's quite a segue right at the start.
Our relationship with our parents, with our children and our parents too. How does that reflect our relationship with God? We talked about making sense of the world through maths and understanding that. Parasocial versus abide. What's your takeaway from this episode, Tim?
Well, a lot of this comes down to an authentic relationship with Jesus. So, yeah. And but if I was to try and wrap all of these into the same neat, tidy thread, that recognition of the distinction in authority and power that he has. So that's where the obedience comes in. He has the right to tell me how to live. He has the right to tell me what a good life looks like. And so, I want to obey him in that. Abiding rather than having a parasocial relationship, it's the genuinely being in relationship with him, knowing him relationally is really, really key. And so, anyway, that's my challenge to myself, and maybe that's something that our listeners can might want to think about themselves. And if not, if there's something other, maybe there's some other aspect of discipleship that is significant for you that you want to grow in this year, and you can, if you're feeling bold, you can put that in the comments underneath, or you can, feel free to email joel@shockabsorber.com.
.com.au.
There we go. And let us know. It'd be great to just sort of share and know, and if we can be praying for you in that'd be great as well. But my takeaway, I guess, authentic relationship with Jesus, and how can you grow in that this year?
Yeah, I love it. And we talked about even having boundaries, and within God's boundaries is freedom.
That's right.
And I love that. So thank you very much. You already took care of the email. But if you need it again, joel@shockabsorber.com.au. Email us if you have any questions, queries, thoughts, or chuck it in our YouTube channel under the comments under this particular video. But thank you, Tim. It's been fun.
You're very welcome.
Good start to 2026.
Yeah. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you. You can tell you've had a break. You're ready, ready to go.
Feeling refreshed.
Refreshed and fired up for the Lord. Thank you anyway. Thank you everyone listening and watching. It's been great to have you back, and we always finish with a one way. Let's see that.
One way.
One way.